I love how they keep saying that they're not making a new edition, but they're essentially making a new edition. I wouldn't even say that because, like, they're drastically changing some of the races. Like, ASMR is gone. Right. The only one I've noticed that they don't have is the Fallen Celestials. The Druid. But you know the ones I'm talking about, like Scourge or whatever the other one. I got my friend Emma who showed up. Seen her for a while. time to say hello to people. Alright, be right back.
Here we go!
Alright, let me get that music real quick. I like it, it's good fun. Alright, welcome everyone to Tabletop Tuesday. I started a little late, and I apologize for that. Welcome, Leisured Spy, to the tavern. Grab yourself a mug of ale, pull up a chair, have fun, and don't fireball my tavern. Alright, where's my drink? Oh, there it is. Sorry about that. We had a kid's school open house to go do, so it started me a little late, and I apologize for that. So welcome to Tabletop Tuesday, where we talk about D&D, Pathfinder, and all kinds of fun stuff. And today's discussion, we're going to be discussing the new playtest release of 1D&D. Of course, with my partner in crime here, CandidGamera.
Hello, hello.
Also, quick announcements. Shockbite Gaming servers down below. Please check them out. $2.50. And then we have our art list. Let me do that real quick, so that way people know. Those are two artists that we need to have assistance with. If you want to commission them, by all means, that helps them out. And we're still also taking money up there for Extra Life. $10 gets you a free game. Alright. How are you doing, bud?
Pretty good.
Pretty good, pretty good. Is this the miniature? Yes, that's the miniature one. Alright, I'm not sure if I should do it this way or should have it like the big text and me as the little screen.
I mean, I guess if you expect people to read it off of your Twitch, you might want it to be the big one for now.
Yeah, I'll go with the small one because it's we're going over the details. Hey, Bub, thank you. So CandidGamera, I wanted to talk about one aspect of this book that needed to get some work.
Okay.
And I plan on sending in because they're asking for feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So I plan on putting this in my feedback. Flip the order of everything in the book.
Okay.
Or at the very least, take the last thing that's in the book and put it first. Because the last thing in the book is literally all the new rules.
Well, they have a spell list.
Okay.
But yeah, but you're right. The next to last thing is the term.
Yeah, the terms list. And let's be brutally honest, they really should have just done that first.
I agree that it makes sense for people to have that first, but
because a lot of the things they talk about in the races and the backgrounds and all that jazz, they bring up stuff in this glossary. Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you, Awesome Sauce, for the hydrate. And honestly, having that information first would have been so helpful without having to scroll all the way down through the document just to find it.
I would agree, and I think a lot of RPGs do put that little terminology thing at the beginning, but the few that don't tend to put it at the end.
Yeah, and this one's not even at the end. It's like kind of sort of in the middle.
Yeah.
And
the spells are in a weird spot.
Yeah, spells are definitely a weird spot. I've heard some people complain about the spells, both Arcane, Divine, and Primal. And I'm going to be brutally honest, that's not that big of a deal for me.
No, I mean, this is intended to be a representative spell list just of Player's Handbook stuff. They say that in the disclaimer. It's like, here's an example spell list for 0 and 1st level for these 3 types, just based on the Player's Handbook.
Okay, give me a second. Hey, buddy.
Hug.
Get your hug. Go to sleep,
Look
buddy.
at my big mommy's teeth.
Yeah, alright. Go to sleep, bud. Alright. Like, I know this is not a comprehensive spell list. Alright?
Yeah.
I fully understand that. It's more of them boiling all classes spell lists down to 3 categories. Arcane,
Sure.
Divine, Primordial. Or Primal. And I'm going to be brutally honest, that's not a terrible idea.
No.
I feel like that gets rid of a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good change. I would very much agree with this change.
I want to see what they do with it. Like, you know, does this mean that bards in the new version are going to have access to the entire arcane list?
Yeah,
that would be interesting.
That is the question that I've seen a lot of people ask online because I've been researching this. Are the bards going to get their own special rule set to choose spells, or are they going to be strictly arcane now?
Well, I mean, you could also have their default spells all come from arcane, and then do the magic secrets thing to allow them to pick off of other ones.
Yeah, which is a possibility, and that's not
Right.
a terrible idea.
No.
So going over the new rules, I like the idea of compiling attacks, saves, and skill checks and ability checks as a term called D20 test.
Yes.
That makes the writing so much more compact. It makes it easier.
Yes. And there are a couple of big things contained in that section that
Yeah.
I would probably like to talk about a little bit, if you don't mind.
Oh, no, that's fine. I want to definitely cover the fact that it says any test has to be no less than 5, so it has to have a minimum DC of 5 and a max DC of 30.
That is one of the things to talk about, yes, and it actually plays into the next stuff. So basically, they're saying if the DC would be less than 5, don't bother rolling. If it's the DC would be greater than 30, don't bother rolling. And I think that there are experienced GMs out there who understand that they're like, oh, I want to take this rock and throw it 5 miles. Well, you can't do that. What do you mean I can't do that? I should be able to do anything. Okay. If you roll a 20, no, you don't do that.
No, it doesn't work. Like, I saw one picture that someone made a joke online. It says, thanks to the rules as written in the new plate test, I can now jump over the Grand Canyon with a natural 20.
Nope.
And it's like, no, you can't do that. It says that under that little section there, it says it cannot be greater than 30. So it's like, so I'm not against that. What I'm more against, though, is the rolling of a natural 1.
You realize our daughter had this in her bedroom? Even though it was out here where you could have seen it.
Where the fuck was it?
Where she had to climb up on stuff to get to it.
Okay. Goddamn, my daughter got a hold of something she shouldn't have.
Now her room stinks.
What is that stuff anyway?
Tangular spray for her hair.
Oh, she sprayed it everywhere, didn't she?
Oh yeah.
Well, she gets to deal with the repercussions. Her room's gonna stink now. All right. So the one thing there are 3 things in the new D20 test that I have issues with, and as a DM, I've never really done except on attack rolls. All right, on one of them.
Right.
Rolling a 1 is an automatic failure on anything now.
Right.
I don't like that for one simple reason on skill checks. Because if you're honestly so skilled in something, and the DC is only 5, meaning it meets the requirement rule to be rolled.
Right.
Even if I roll 1, I should be able to pass it.
Well, and yeah, I agree with you in principle, but I would say as a GM, if it's something that is a difficulty of 5 and you've got like a plus 15, I don't make you roll.
Yeah, I at that point I would just say don't roll, but rules as written.
That it says to be warranted, it must have a target number no less than 5, no greater than 30. Not if it has a target number greater than 5, it has to be warranted.
Right.
This is a necessary condition, but not what they call a sufficient.
Right.
The GM still has the option to say, you know what, this is so easy for you, don't roll.
Right, but here's my thing, though. We got to try to remember that we are experienced players in DMs.
Sure.
Thank you, Bond, for the check-in, by the way. Thank you. Welcome. We're experienced DMs. And an inexperienced DM is not going to see that way.
It's possible.
Yeah, all right. There is that possibility. The other one is rolling a natural 20 guarantees success.
Yes.
I got some issues with that, but they're not big issues. It's like a minor thing. It's like, just because you roll a 20 doesn't mean you succeed.
I mean, I think with the
Meryl is a sweet girl, but there's a whole lot of crazy in that little package.
5 and 30.
In all the time you've known me, have I ever given you the impression that I was turned off by crazy?
9,
Okay, point taken.
even if I've got a bonus of plus 4, I should really succeed because you basically said it is possible. I rolled as high as I possibly could. Are you really going to worry about me on the skill check? Now, keep in mind, this 1 in 20 stuff has applied to attack rolls and saving throws for basically since 3rd edition
Yeah,
onward.
the only thing they're adding to it is now ability checks and skills.
Right. And I think that, yes, you're losing a little bit of fine-grained stuff. Like, yeah, sometimes rolling a 1, you'd still be able to succeed, or sometimes rolling a 20, you'd still be able to fail. But I think the consistency gained by unifying this outweighs the minor of like, well, you've only got a +5, even with a natural 20, you should be.
Yeah, that's why I said it's like a minor issue. It's not something that like does it away from me, but I see the abuse in this.
Possibly, and keep in mind, of course, this is just the playtest document. These are broad strokes. I would expect the DMG, when they release it, to have more guidance on this. Like, hey, if your character has a +11 to a roll, and you think that they would automatically make the skill check, just don't make them roll. I think that advice will appear somewhere.
By the way, hi Squidgy, welcome. Squidgy did his verbal opening, or vocal opening thing.
Yes. I don't hear that part of the stream.
Yeah. Now, I will say this. This third part is the one I have the most issue with.
Okay.
And straight up, like, it's dumb as hell. Only weapons and unarmed strikes get critical hits in 5e. In this new version. In 5e, spells used to get it too.
That's correct.
And that nerfs casters hard. Because a lot of spells in 5e now require attack rolls.
Yes. And, I mean, I'm not too worried about that, depending on what they do with casters. Yes, as written, it is straight up a nerf to casters.
I would say it's straight up nerf to casters, but it's also a nerf to those moments in D&D where you're fighting in a battle and the enemy happens to roll a natural 20 and you also take that hit, but you still survive it and you're like, oh, I'm holding on. Because they also stated that only players can get critical hits.
Well, I've seen some people discussing that, and that's what the playtest rules say so far, that they have a special feature for player characters. We don't know if monsters will get it. We don't know if some monsters will get it and some won't.
What do you think of the cup?
I think, like, honestly, even if they gave, like, the rules should have just been universally kept the same for both parties, sides of the party, because it adds that level of luck and risk to the combat that is sometimes makes the game fun.
It can, though I will point out that one of the well-worn adages in game design for this kind of stuff is, when people talk about optional rules like fumbles, like, rolling a 1 does something bad. Anything that tends to increase the chaos of battle tends to be more pro-monster and anti-player character, just because there are more monsters making more attack rolls in general. Yeah.
Hi, Lizzie Borden. Welcome. I would, like I said, I normally agree with you. It's just I like both sides having that ability to crit. It seems like it's a law of the world than less of what Starfinder did, which was something that I really hated, which was Thank you, Glistening Faith Fox, for increasing my heart rate just by a little. One of the things I'm going to talk about Starfinder just for a moment, because this is one aspect of the game that really just irked the shit out of me, and that was in Starfinder, the PCs got a special health pool that no one else got.
Yeah.
And that made them, like, immensely tougher than everyone else. Like, and it caused, like, I saw this happen in Pathfinder Society, too. And I watched, like, some Pathfinder Society streams. It caused players in Starfinder to go stupid and do really risky things.
I mean, I see that more as a feature than a bug. That's what you want your space fantasy heroes to do. You want them to take those risks.
Well, yes and no. Like, you want them to take risks and to do those kind of things. But, like, some of the things I was seeing were just, like...
Are you stupid?
Like, okay, I'll give you one example. In Star Wars, remember how Han Solo chased a couple stormtroopers down the hall?
Yeah.
And then when he reached the end of the hall, there was a whole room of stormtroopers, and he was like, shit, and he shot one and he ran back away.
Yeah.
I've seen Starfinder characters duke it out in the fucking room.
I mean, did they win?
For the most part, yes.
Then I think the question is, do they have too much of a health bonus, not whether or not the health bonus itself is bad.
Yeah, but you get my point. It's just like, you gotta keep it somewhat parallel here, so that way your villains have a chance of succeeding.
So, I mean, there are games that handle this in different ways. Fourth edition had minion enemies, which were basically one hit point wonders, and they were patently unlike your player character.
Oh yeah. They got squished easily.
Savage Worlds, where the PCs are all aces and can, spin bennies, and they get an extra wild die, and some enemies are aces, but most enemies are not. The player characters are acknowledged as special with their ability to, manipulate probability. Likewise, 5th edition right now, as far as I know, bad guys can't get inspiration.
Yeah.
That is an asymmetry. The heroes of the story can get inspiration. The antagonists cannot. So This is another example of something like that, and I'm going to be honest, one of the things I'm suspecting with this critical hit rule as a possibility is some games move the die rolls all to the players and make the GM not roll dice in most circumstances. And I'm wondering if this is going to be a situation like that.
Yeah, or they give the DM monster abilities that have a recharge feature, I've seen.
Sure.
And they're like, these are the big hits they do. And the DM can decide when to do them.
Right, like you might have he does a critical hit thing that he can do once per combat.
Yeah.
And you can decide when dramatically to use that.
Which, if they incorporate that in, I would have less of an issue.
Mm-hmm.
But I still, until we've seen more information, this is one of my big sticking points.
Sure.
Especially with how they treat casters with it and how they treat monsters with it. It seems like they're overly focusing on melee and combat characters.
This may be a way also of, with a specific reference to the spells, they may be looking at rebalancing the effectiveness of, a fighter versus wizard. And,
but here's
trying
the thing.
to make fighter keep up there.
But here's the thing. In D&D 5e, I'm not sure how much you've played.
A decent bit.
A decent bit. The melee characters, the fighter characters, they mainly do damage. That is their main shtick. The only difference between them and spellcasters is spellcasters have more utility.
Mm-hmm.
So your solution for the lack of utility on martial characters is to just make them do more damage does not work.
It's not a solution for lack of utility. It's a solution, honestly, because Arcane Caster can out-damage the martial characters in this case.
I've played a high-level fighter. With the sheer number of attacks I was throwing out, I was out-damaging the caster every time.
Well, I mean, great, but I'm looking at the game that I'm in right now. The ones that are getting in melee and fighting, they do fine, but they have to get into melee. They have to worry about mobility too. They have to worry about getting close and getting exposed. Whereas our warlock has Eldritch Blast and has hideous range and great damage, and it's just like the best fucking thing we have going.
Well, yeah, and no, that's one thing, but once again, I can counter that with the simple fact that there's ranged fighter builds that literally do as much damage, if not more, than the Eldritch Blast cannon.
I mean, I looked at it for the same level, and I couldn't figure out a way to do it. Maybe I'm missing some stuff.
character.
Hey, Chit-Chit.
And it's still out-damaged it.
Well, it's mainly because it's the sheer number of attacks, the archer fighting style.
Again, wow.
They love it. Glistening Fae Fox really loves that squeal. She likes scaring the everlasting crap out of me.
I told you not to do this.
I know.
Are you gonna change it?
No.
You're not getting better.
I know.
Please, for the sake of everybody's sanity.
I love you. But people are doing it, so it's good.
It's funny.
God damn it, Squidgy. Squidgy just fireballed the tavern.
And I just squeaked.
There's also the fact that there's all kinds of ranger abilities that turn archery into basically hell. Like one of the ranger abilities literally turns their bow into a bloody machine gun.
Multi-shot.
In 5e. No, we're talking about 5e, hon. Like, Ranger in 5e has an ability that basically gives them unlimited ammo and, a machine gun bow for, X number of turns.
That's great.
So...
And it's so I don't feel that the critical hits only on physical attacks is overly helpful. If you're going to include critical hit and critical miss, I would say also apply it to the spells that also require hits.
I mean,
you have to roll across the board.
I would say that you could have it sometimes. If you wanted to treat certain spells as weapons, you could write in that spell's description that it counts as a weapon and therefore is eligible for critical hit.
Yeah. I will say. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say it's a really, really modest damage tweak. You're talking about 1 in every 20 attacks being affected by it, and even when it triggers, you're adding just the base damage of your weapon.
Yeah.
And so it's really marginal.
For damage, actually, I would say slightly different. For example, with the way rogues and paladins work in 5e, if they get a critical hit, they can critically smite and critically sneak attack right now, as is.
And they get some bonus damage for using their abilities. Yeah. And maybe those will be retained. We don't know yet.
Yeah. The next thing is all the tools are getting to the same cost, except for the gaming set, which is now 1 gold. And that makes sense. I like that.
Yeah.
It makes it a little easier. They've modified the grapple condition.
Grappling, I love what they've done here.
Yeah. This fixes so much shit with grapple in 5e.
Yes.
And it makes it way more useful. Like in 5e as is right now, it's okay. You can do some things with it.
Mm-hmm.
But this gives you so many more options.
Yeah, I loved the changes and clarifications to both grapple and unarmed strike.
Yeah.
That kind of dovetailed it.
They took away improvised weapon.
Yeah. I will say, just backing up for just a second, that one of the things that I actually thought was maybe ill thought out is when you roll a natural 20, you get inspiration. And honestly, I probably would have done it the other way. Like, if you roll a natural 1, you get inspiration to kind of make up for it. But that's just me.
Yeah. I was going to get into inspiration here in a minute. I was going through the book in
order. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Incapacitated. The way it's written, it makes me think that you're going to have this on surprise rounds.
Could be. That last clause is certainly interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The big change, though, they made to it is you can't speak while incapacitated.
Yes.
And that was definitely needed. Inspiration, they're trying to make inspiration more of a big deal in this. I've noticed, especially, they're giving it more often. There's one race that we're going to be talking about here in a bit that gets it every time they complete a long rest.
Yep.
And so, it's one free advantage die roll.
And I love this because the 5e game that I'm in, we have never gotten inspiration once. The GM he's either not thinking about it or doesn't care for the mechanic. So we've never gotten inspiration for anything at any time.
Yeah.
yeah, I really think it's a more important part of 5e than he's giving it credit for.
Yeah, and it's definitely like every game I've played in though, we've gotten inspiration, and the Bard has definitely been able to give it, and not to mention we've also gotten it from various other sources. So I haven't experienced the downside.
The Bard ability is different.
I know it's slightly different, but it uses a similar name.
I mean, similar name, yes. It gives you an additional die, not like an alternate d20. It gives you like an extra d6 or something.
The changes to long rest are good. I think those are pretty good, especially interrupting the rest.
Yeah.
That was a good change. Musical instruments being categorized as a tool is good. The slowed condition, the way they worded it, was definitely needed to be done. Instead of having your movement, it was every foot you move counts as 2.
Yes.
The rewording of that helps so much.
Because it stacks better with things like difficult terrain.
Yeah, well, one, it stacks better with difficult terrain, but also at the same time, the example I heard, which was you're grabbing someone and you're dragging them, okay, with the grapple condition, which puts you slow, or give you the slow condition, and you move them 10 feet, which counts as 20.
Yep.
Then you let them go. You still have 20 feet of movement, or 10 feet of movement.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, boom. That makes so much more sense than you trying to figure out, okay, I was halved, I moved this far, da 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 da. It's like,
right.
It simplifies it so much.
Yeah.
We talked about the unarmed strike earlier. That those changes are pretty good. I like those. And then we got the feats. The fact that they're giving feats levels requirements, or making them more apparent anyway, is a good choice. Though some of the feats definitely got a nerf and some of them got a buff. The alert feat got a nerf and a buff.
Yes, it got kind of a change around, let's say.
Yeah, your proficiency bonus to the roll, not that great for most of the game because it's rare for a game to get so high that you get to a +5 proficiency bonus or higher.
So, I mean, the old one basically said that you're never surprised, basically, right?
Yeah. And you got a +5 to your initiative.
Was it a flat 5? Okay.
It was a flat 5.
So now it's your proficiency bonus, which we assume that they're scaling about the same as they do in 5e. So it'll start at +2 and it climb.
Yeah.
But you get that extra tactical benefit.
Yeah, the initiative swap is just so good.
And I really like that. So I think it is clever and useful. And yeah.
I'd say a good player would know how to do it, how to use it well. The crafter feat, not that good.
It's very niche, depending on what you're doing with the campaign. It could be cool. I can see why they have it in there, but I don't see any.
I don't see any use for it, like, or much use for it, because it's like 3 different artisan tools of your choice. Okay, that's neat. Like, you could also get that from a background though too. The discount to non-magical items is worthless because it's rare that non-magical items cost a lot of money.
Well, here's what I'm going to just put a bug in your ear. What if you buy things for the party? You essentially spend a fee to get everyone in the party a 20% discount on every non-magical item.
Right, every non-magical item, but how much money do non-magical items tend to cost?
I mean, for exception for like big armor, not that much.
Yeah, not much. So a 20% discount is literally going to not be that helpful. Like, if it's going to be this niche, I feel like it should be higher.
What I will counter with is the example of running something like your Game of Thrones game, where you're managing a kingdom. You can turn this into a 20% on all the supplies you need to have for your thralls, your minions, your castle.
Yeah, which, don't get me wrong, that makes sense, and that's really helpful. But once again, that's still pretty niche.
Yes, like I said, it is very, very specific.
The faster crafting is okay, but once again,
Yep.
it doesn't say magical or non-magical on that one,
Right.
so that could be helpful. The healer feat, definitely an upgrade. It makes it
Mm-hmm.
more useful for even clerics to take. The lucky feat, I both like and dislike this. The 3 free rerolls was kind of cool from the lucky feat,
Mm-hmm.
but this one gives you the ability to put advantage on rolls, so you have to put it on beforehand.
But it says immediately after you roll a d20.
Yeah, it says immediately after roll a d20 for a d20 test, spend 1 luck point to give yourself advantage on that roll.
So you can see that you rolled poorly and roll an additional die.
Right. And then there's disadvantage, which doesn't say you have to, whenever a creature rolls a d20 for the attack roll, you spend 1 and you give it disadvantage. It doesn't say under it, though, after you roll. It says when it rolls.
Correct.
So that, not as useful as lucky used to be, which was any roll at any time. You just say re-roll that.
Right.
So there is some downside with that. It does weaken it a little, but I feel like this could be more tactically used.
Right, and the nice thing is you get more luck points as you scale up in level.
Yeah. Magic Initiate didn't really go through much of a change.
Nope.
So really not going to cover that.
I think the only change that I noticed was that you can also cast a spell using any spell slots you have, which I don't believe was part of the previous.
Right, that is correct. It was so there was that, and that was kind of helpful. Musician is kind of neat. You get the ability to give inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
So I see a lot of bards taking that just to stack
Yep.
on their inspiration on top of the extra die. Savage Attacker is changed. The way it used to work was when you did Savage Attacker because it was a barbarian mainly ability. You rolled your damage die twice, and you got to add both dice. And this one is you take the higher of the two. You're essentially rolling advantage on your damage die for your weapon.
Right. Whereas it used to essentially be every hit is basically a crit now.
Yeah, every hit is a crit. Well, you only got to do it so many times.
Right. Okay. So you can do it more often now.
Yeah,
but it's not as potent.
Not nearly as potent. No. Skilled is kind of meh. It's just extra proficiencies, which can be useful, but not superly so.
Is it the same as it was before?
I think so. If it has changed, it hasn't changed much. Not enough that I noticed.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was 2 or 3 skills before.
I think it was 3. I think it was 3 as well.
Okay.
Tavern Brawler went through a big change. They removed improvisational weapons.
Yep.
And they declared any furniture you're using as a weapon has to be counted as an actual rules weapon.
Yep.
Which is helpful, I guess, but it removes some of the creativity I feel from it. Because there are some monks who go full Jackie Chan with this ability in 5e, and they could do some kooky stuff, which was fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's that. Tough is really not that different.
Yep.
It's just extra HP. And then we get into, I'm going to do races first, and then I'll do classes, or backgrounds.
Races and backgrounds.
Races and
backgrounds. Up.
Yeah. So let's talk about human, which
let's back up just a second. Let's talk about the new structure of a race, a background, and a language.
Yeah,
which is an interesting way to break it out.
Yeah, a race, background, language, which is not too terribly different than what it used to be.
Right. They've just essentially moved the stat bonuses into the backgrounds So you aren't at a disadvantage if you want to play an elf barbarian or a halfling barbarian,
Yeah,
whatever.
which I have mixed feelings on, because I feel like thematically it should be a little bit of both. Like, we shouldn't have a +3 bonus only on race, and we shouldn't have a +3 bonus only on background.
I like it better on background because it just feels a more natural fit there. Like, okay, if you're a dwarf, you're supposed to be hardy and have a high constitution.
Right.
And the way that was used to be represented was by having a +2 constitution to whatever your starting constitution.
Right.
But, you can say, well, if you're an average dwarf, maybe they assign their stats when they roll them and they tend to favor constitution. That's a way to model that. But if you're a dwarf who works at this particular job, then you have become exceptionally hardy even for a dwarf. So I kind of like the new way just as much, if not more, than the old way.
Oh, no, like, don't get me wrong, the old way had its flaws, and I do agree
Yeah.
with that. But I always felt it should be like, if you're going to do 3 stat bonuses, one should be on race, and the other 2 should be on background. Because this is very much the argument of nature versus nurture.
Sure.
And if you do it that way, you represent both. There's a reason why both are still, like, very much a part of our society. And that argument is still going on, because there's evidence for both.
Right. But what I'm saying here is that the player characters aren't average members of a species. They are heroes. They also generate their stats either by point buy or by random selection. So they already have the ability to customize their stats within the context of their nature. So what they have to add on to that is their nurture. So my argument is that essentially the nature is modeled by the assignment or generation of stats by the player, and the fact that, okay, they're not a normal member, they're an above average member in some ways.
Right.
And then the nurture actually shapes them more into the final product.
I can I can see that. That's why I said put the 2 on backgrounds and put 1 in race.
Yeah, like I said, I just think that the random dice or point buy on the race essentially side, and then you could put all the bonuses on the background side, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah. I mean, this is one we could discuss until bloody the cows come home.
Sure.
It's just that was my thought. It was like represent nature and nurture that way, with just 1 on race and 2 on background. That was my thought anyway. I do like the fact that they put it in here that if you do use the background bonuses, you cannot use the race bonuses from the book.
Yeah, because you would have had that assholes like, I'm going to be one of the old style Azamar, and then I'm going to take one of these new backgrounds, and I get +6 to a bunch of abilities. No, sorry.
No, it doesn't work like that. They changed human. They
did.
They made every human a variant human.
Yep.
Which is good and bad. It's what most people played anyway, so it makes sense. The resourceful is basically trying to force people to use inspiration more.
Uh-huh.
So if you play a human, you get an inspiration whenever you finish a long rest.
Yep.
You get a proficiency in 1 skill of your choice. Humans usually got that. And you got versatile, which was the skilled feat, or 1 first level feat of your choice. Either way. The only issue I have with human is I see the medium, and then they added small.
Yeah.
And these are supposed to be adults.
Dwarfism is a thing.
I know dwarf, but how many people are running around that are 2 feet tall?
I mean, 2 does seem a little low.
Yeah, I would have been okay if they just said, like, I don't know many people that are under 4 feet tall, really, that much.
I mean, basically, genetic dwarfism is what I feel like they're modeling here.
Yeah.
Alternatively, you could have a player character who is like a 12-year-old.
Yeah. Which is, if you're going to do that, then yeah, play a small character. That makes sense. But, that's an exception, not the average.
Right, but they're just allowing you explicitly in the rules to make the exception.
Yeah. There's then, other than that, humans fine. Then there's the next one, which is the Ardling, and I refer to this to Takashi as what was the words I used? Because I remember, what was it? The Ardling, basically furry celestials, and your personas depending on your alignment.
Furry.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. It feels like they basically said, hey, we're going to get rid of ASMR and we're going to replace them with this.
And I have two reasons why I think that that's not necessarily the case, but I understand that being at first glance what that looks like.
Well, they get a lot of ASMR abilities.
Yes.
Like a ton of them.
Yes.
Then your legacy, which is Exalted, Heavenly, or Idyllic. Exalted is lawful good. Heavenly is chaotic good, I believe. And Idyllic is neutral good.
Exalted is chaotic. Heavenly is lawful. Idyllic is neutral.
I got them backwards. My bad. The spells they offer, not terrible. They all can be useful. The suggested animals is just okay. My only suggestion would be move bear to heavenly instead of idyllic. And that's because every time we've had any kind of bear people in D&D before, whether that's werebears, celestial bears, whatever, they've traditionally been lawful good. And it's just like, it seems a little weird that they're now neutral good. It's just like a minor thing for me. It's like nitpicking at my brain.
Yeah, I mean, that does feel pretty nitpicky just because it's such a minor thing. I see that suggested animals, and I'm like, basically people are going to ignore this. These are suggestions. Pay no attention to it.
Yeah. They get resistance to radiant damage. Players rarely take radiant damage, so unless we start seeing new monsters throwing out radiant damage, so far the only one I've seen is the new Radiant Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only one I've seen that's even remotely talked about radiant damage. So there is that.
But yeah, I like the idea of the Ardling, but what I will say with regard to the Aasimar is one of my favorite D&D races since they were introduced.
Yeah.
And I don't view this as eliminating the Aasimar because in 5th edition, and actually all previous editions that I'm aware of, the Aasimar was not the player's handbook. It is not one of the default races.
Yeah.
This is a celestial race being added as a default race, which is good, but, you can make the argument, well, if they have these guys, why would they do Aasimar? And you might be right.
Yeah.
But my counterpoint is that if you want a human-looking person without a furry head that does all this shit, you have to scroll up to page 2 and look at children of different humanoid kinds and say, Ardling, human half-breed, favors the human in physical appearance, has all the Ardling abilities, done.
Yeah.
And there's your Aasimar.
Yeah. And we're going to get to half races here in a bit. When we get through.
Yeah.
So we talk about Dragonborn. They changed the breath weapon.
Mm-hmm.
It's now all a 15-foot cone. None of them are lines. Give me a second. My daughter keeps passing right behind me, so I have to keep turning off the camera. There you go. Sorry about that, folks. The fact that it's now all cones and not some of them are lines, I get the confusion. They're trying to make it simple for everyone to understand. It makes it easier. The only problem I have with that is if the dragon they come from still has a line breath weapon, why do they have a cone?
And I think that is for game balance purposes.
I think it's mostly for game balance, but you understand this is a little confusing.
Yeah.
Because at that point, I'd be like, if I'm playing a Dragonborn and I'm breathing a cone, and then suddenly I see basically the equivalent of one of my parents, or whatever it is, breathe a line of, say, lightning, I'm going to look at him and go, am I seriously related to you, or did we fuck up somewhere?
Well, you just got something stuck in your hose, and so the water's spraying out all over.
Yeah, apparently. The ability to use it number of times equal to your proficiency bonus is kind of cool. I like
Yep.
that. That was helpful. The one thing I don't like about this is in Fizbins, they made a change to Dragonborn's breath weapons.
Okay.
Instead of taking your whole action to breathe out, you can use it as part of an attack action,
Ah.
which makes it way more useful. Because I'll be brutally honest, if you use it as rules is written, like in this and the way it originally was in 5e, very few people use the breath weapon after like level 5.
Yeah.
It was dumb to do so. But adding it as an attack action is kind of cool, and it also adds a thematic coolness to it.
Mm-hmm.
Where you hit one enemy, and then you turn your head and you just exhale in another direction. It gives this almost thematic movie feel that feels just cool. And it's not like it's overpowered either. It's not like an insane amount of damage. So it's helpful, I would say. The big change though to Dragonborn though right now is they added dark vision, finally.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people were screaming about that for Jesus years.
That reminds me. Son of a bitch, the Ardlings don't have dark vision.
No, they don't. They took it away.
That's fun.
Then we get to dwarves. Dwarves lost their hill dwarf and their mountain dwarf. They're all just now dwarf.
And to be honest, the distinctions between the dwarf subraces were always pretty
muddy.
Evil.
Yeah, they weren't great. Like, I'm not considering that a giant deal.
Right.
It was just like, oh, okay, they lost it. I mean, it's nice that each race would have their own sub races, but I would say, if anything, if they do the full-on player's handbook, do what they did kind of in 3.5 for a lot of the sub races, and that is just a little flavor text blurb about like what they look like. Like a hill dwarf will kind of wear these kind of clothes and use these kind of weapons, and a mountain dwarf will kind of do this, different from its cousin. But don't put any like game stat rules in for it. Just put at least the thematic changes. I feel like that would be kind of nice.
Sure.
They still have dark vision, which is nice. They still have dwarven resistance, also nice. Dwarven toughness was something new, and that is your hit point maximum increases. Essentially, you have the tough feat for free.
Half of it, don't you? Because it's
half of it.
Because it gives you 2 per level.
Yeah,
and so this is, I think, where we also are modeling some of the nature of the dwarven, being hardy.
Yeah. Forge wise is kind of neat. I kind of like that. It's still like crafting dwarf stuff. Stone cutting though, while it is powerful, and I agree it can be powerful, it feels weird.
It does, but I'm intrigued by it.
Like I want to try it out and see how well it works, but at the same time, I'm looking at it going, Nani? They got tremor sense? That's odd.
Yep.
Like, I kind of liked the older version where you had the ability to go, hey, I kind of feel like there's a secret door right here because the stone looks weird.
I can tell we're exactly 60 feet beneath the surface, and the slope is going down at a 5-degree angle.
It's like, how's that stone? Like, that feels so weird.
I like it. It's very, very cool, I think.
It's cool, but it's something I'm going to have to try out to see how I feel about it. Because right now, I'm kind of iffy on that one. It feels weird to me.
Sure.
And that's all. Elf, not really much has changed. All elves now get dark vision instead of low light vision.
Which is interesting and appreciated.
Yeah. There's the elven lineage, which gives you some spells and some abilities. There's the Fey ancestry, which is you have advantage on saving throws to the charm condition.
And interestingly specifies to avoid or end the charmed condition.
Yeah, avoid or end, yeah. Keen senses, you get proficiency in perception. Okay. They brought back trance, and they put in the rules for it, which is nice to have. There was always something thematic about it that was interesting. For Drow, their dark vision increases to 120. They get dancing lights, fairy fire, and darkness. Nothing new there for Drow.
Nope.
High Elf gets prestidigitation now.
And
you can replace it with a different cantrip from the arcane spell list. Then they get detect magic, and they get Misty Step,
which is just choice.
But here's the more broken one: Wood Elf. No, hear me out. And there's a reason behind it. Your speed increases to 35 feet. All right. The Druid craft is kind of like, okay, that's nice. But then on top of it, you get Long Strider and Pass Without Trace. You play an elf rogue, and congratulations, everything is in melee range now.
Yeah.
And no one will see you coming.
Yeah.
Everything's dead.
It's fantastic.
That's why I said it's the most powerful of the three. Just straight up.
And in many cases it can be. I mean, you're definitely going to be moving like a motherfucker.
Yeah, if you play a Wood Elf monk, fighter, or any kind of melee user, Wood Elf is definitely a choice one to pick.
And I love it because it feels so thematic, and I love that the other lineages have parity with Drow now. Like you have them in the same structure. Here's my weird beef about the elf. There are too few lineages, and I hope they expand on them.
Because I noticed one that was missing, and it popped in my head immediately because I've been working on my aquatic game so much.
Yeah,
and that's the aquatic elves.
I love aquatic elves. I love the Avariel. I love wild elves, which used to be distinct from wood elves.
Yeah, they were.
I miss gray elves, which were a thing back in 2nd edition. I'd love to see more elven lineages.
Gray elves were.
But
oh,
here's the reason that specifically, kind of, bugs me, because they talk about high elves in the Elves of Many Worlds section, and they say that the sun elves and moon elves of Forgotten Realms are both high elves, and I'm like, bullshit.
They're not. That's not the same elf. You know
I'm Forgotten Realms fanboy. They are different.
Do you know what's reminding me of the way they worded high elves?
Mm-hmm.
World of Warcraft.
Okay.
There are 2 elves in World of Warcraft. There were sun elves, which are the high elves, and moon elves. All right.
Mm-hmm.
In World of Warcraft, they both had a well of infinite magic that the elves feed on. The sun elves' sun well goes boom, because one of the big bads basically uses it to resurrect a lich.
Yeah.
And they become blood elves.
Yep.
This whole description of high elves screams World of Warcraft to me. That they're trying to mimic it.
Maybe?
At least in some way.
I'll tell you what it reminds me of the most. It's the Eladrin from 4th edition, when they started to introduce the high fairy elves, like the ones that were closer to their fey roots.
Yeah.
And, that's not terrible. I like that.
It was the implementation on how they did it in 4th Ed that just didn't work.
Yeah.
It was the concept was not bad. It was just, how do we implement this? And they're like, oh, this is the best way to implement it? Okay, let's do the opposite. It's like, god damn it. Gnome is kind of cool. I like what they did with Gnome.
Yes. The gnomes, what was it that stood out to me? Yeah, the gnomish cunning is actually really interesting.
That is incredibly potent.
Yes.
Because 9 times out of 10, most of your spells that affect you are targeting those 3 saves.
Yes.
With Constitution being the 4th, and if you want a good way, Con and Dex, what is it? Con, Dex, and Wisdom are the 3 most common. Ones to attack, and you at least have Wisdom covered from that. So what you do is you just pump up your Con and your Dex, and you are a fucking saving throw fiend.
Yeah.
Um,
I love that we still have two gnomish lineages.
and they're very different from each other. One's all about like minor illusion, speak with animals, things of that nature, and rock gnomes have mending and prestidigitation, which is kind of cool.
And yeah, you can do the tiny clockwork device, essentially doing the Tinker Gnome thing.
Oh yeah, they basically built in a Tinker Gnome, which is
Yeah.
really kind of cool, and I like the idea. With Halfling, they upped the Halfling speed to 30 feet, which
Good.
I think they just made everybody 30 feet just to make it easy.
Except those wood elves who are running along. But
Yeah.
I believe everybody has 30 feet.
Yeah, they get brave, which is advantage on frightened condition. Okay, so fear. There's our fear thing.
Again, to avoid or end.
Yep, void or end. Halfling nimbleness, you can move through a space of any creature that is a size larger than yours, but you can't stop there. I like they added this.
Yep.
This was something that needed to be added for halflings for a long time now.
Mm-hmm.
Because like in so much media we see involving halflings, they're always like running through people's legs and shit. And it's just like, why can't we have this in D&D? Their luck is kind of neat.
Yes.
And that I could see that being both useful and broken at the same time, but it's not terrible. And then there's naturally stealthy, which is they have proficiency in the stealth skill. This is still going to make a lot of people play halfling rogues constantly.
I mean, they're still a very good fit for halfling rogues.
Yep. Then we have orc. And when I read orc, I pictured a video game in particular.
Okay.
And that was the Elder Scrolls series.
Okay.
There is a race in Elder Scrolls. There are orcs in Elder Scrolls, but this is not what these guys have. All right? What I pictured was the Red Guard. All right? Because what the Red Guard get is Adrenaline Rush. That's the name of their ability, and it acts just like this. Like, you move, like, you get, like, extra hit points. You can, like, sometimes move. In the game, you move faster and hit harder. But in this case, you just, whenever you take the dash action as a bonus action, you do so, you gain temporary hit points equal to your proficiency bonus. So it's extra HP. And it feels much like the Red Guard ability. They gave Orcs powerful build, which is something that was naturally in Goliaths.
Yep.
So this gives me the impression they may not be bringing back Goliath. Maybe.
Possibly. Was Goliath previously a large character race, or were they medium?
They were medium.
Okay, so they were just a big medium.
Everybody plays them as giant-ass mediums.
Okay.
And they also, Goliaths get relentless endurance, but they also had something called Stone's endurance.
Okay.
So they were like very tough, very hard to kill, and they had the powerful build feature as well. Orcs seem to be fitting that role. So there is that. Then we got Tieflings. Tieflings.
And we've got 3 flavors of them, just like the 3 flavors of Ardling.
But here's the thing. I've always done Tieflings as capable of being infernal, abyssal, or in this case they call it chthonic. I forget what the old 5e version called it and like 3.5 called it. The neutral evil plane.
I mean, it's Hades, isn't it?
I think it was Hades or something like that.
Yeah.
I could never remember off the top of my head. That sounds right.
Hades, the Grey Waste.
Yeah. But I've always played Tieflings as being able to come from any evil outsider.
Sure.
From those planes. So this essentially just codifies what I've noticed most DMs already do.
Yeah.
Which is not terrible. Like, a lot of people are, like, making a giant deal, like, this is awesome, this is amazing. I'm like, dude, we've already been doing this for years. I mean, it's nice to see it in print, but that's not a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I did the same thing. You could be descendant of essentially any evil outsider race, but what this does that is nice is gives them some mechanical differences in terms of their spells and resistances,
Yeah.
which I think is a nice addition.
Yeah, which is a nice addition in D&D. Pathfinder has been doing it since the outset of Tiefling.
That's right. They do have some variant tieflings.
Yep. All the variant Tieflings are all from different demons and devils and things of that nature, and it gives you different abilities and different spells on your Tiefling. So essentially, Pathfinder has already done this since Pathfinder First Edition. This is nothing new.
But it wasn't right out of the gate with Pathfinder First Edition. I forget which supplement they introduced it in. Planner Adventure.
Complete Race or something, whatever the race guide
Complete Race, the Advanced Race Guide.
The Advanced Race Guide. That's when they threw it in.
Okay.
So it wasn't until then, which was about a year and a half into Pathfinder. I want to say.
Okay.
I want to say it was a year and a half, maybe 2 years into Pathfinder, in that ballpark.
Yeah.
So there was that. Other than that, I don't think it's like Tieflings really are like changed much. Other than once again, you can make a small Tiefling, which is odd, but maybe they just got together with a Halfling. Who knows?
Or an imp, is your devilish parent.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I feel like I could step on my dad.
Oddly, tieflings bottom out at 3 feet, where humans bottom out at 2 feet. So
yeah, that's once again still weird because there are smaller demons and devils.
Yep.
Than there are humans. I feel like that should be reversed.
I think Vern Troyer, Mini-Me from Austin Powers, is one of the shortest human beings ever to live. And I think he was just over 2 feet.
Let me look up shortest human. 21.5 inches.
Okay, so just under 2 feet.
Just under 2 feet. That is the world's shortest human. And that should be like the extreme.
Right. And let's see. Oh, Wikipedia has an article of the list of the world's verified shortest people.
I feel like they're all going to be under 3 feet easy. Something tells me that.
Well, in terms of actors, there is one on the list that's just over 4 feet, but he's included because he's the world's shortest active stuntman.
Oh.
Which is interesting.
Okay, cool. So, while you're doing that, we'll discuss backgrounds. Or at least the start of it. So, they made it so that you can build any background you want.
Yep.
But I'm going to be brutally honest. All the backgrounds I saw in this book cover most of the bases.
Yeah.
Like, they even added a few backgrounds that I felt needed to be in the game, and god damn, it's about time that they're in there. All right?
Yeah, I really love basically, here's how we build a background. You can make whatever you want. Oh, and by the way, here's some we already built.
Yeah, here's some we already built. So when you do a background, you pick 2 ability scores. One is increased by 2, one is increased by 1. Or you can choose 3 ability scores, increase them by 1 each.
Yep.
Skill proficiency, choose 2 skills, you get proficiency in them. Tool proficiency, choose 1 tool, you get a tool proficiency in it, so everybody gets a tool. There are some backgrounds in 5e that don't have any tools.
Correct, yes.
At all. So this is forcing everyone to get a tool. Then there's
tool time.
It's tool time, yep. Then there's you get 1 language from the standard language, is a rare language table, and your character knows that language. You get a feat.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, languages briefly as an aside. That means every character will start knowing Common. They'll start knowing a language from their background, and they'll start with a free language that they get as just a first level character.
Yeah.
So everybody starts with 3 languages, which I like.
Yeah, which is helpful. Don't get me wrong. It's just the only problem I would say as a DM, and this is what I would do for mostly NPCs especially. If you're living in an area that isn't exposed to a lot of languages, don't give them extra languages.
For NPCs, again, we're talking that the player characters are
Right.
somewhat special, somewhat acceptable.
Or if you have a PC who's from an area that only has one language, give them only one language and then leave them 2 open slots to learn languages throughout the roleplay.
Absolutely.
That would
Let
be
the
my
player
recommendation
pick
for
them
that.
up. Yeah.
I do that whenever like I notice a player is missing languages on their character sheet when I play Pathfinder or D&D. I go, hey, you're missing like 3 languages. Just pick them up as you go.
Mm-hmm.
Figure something out. Acolyte hasn't changed any. Artisan didn't change. Charlatan didn't change. Criminal didn't change.
Well, except for the feat that they're all getting and the language they're all getting.
Yeah. They all get a feat and they all get a language. Like, so for example, Artisan gets Magic Initiate, Divine. Artisan gets Crafter. Charlatan gets Skilled. Criminal gets Alert. But they also get Thieves' Cant.
As a language, yes.
Yeah. Cultists is a new one, and that's kind of cool.
Yes.
I like that. I looked into it, and the biggest reason why they did it was they spoke with some players and so on and so forth, and a lot of people wanted to have that kind of a background thanks to the 2nd season of Critical Role.
Mm-hmm.
Where Taliesin Jaffrey's character, his first one, was from a cult.
Yeah.
And they wanted to be able to represent that in their character in the background. And I'm like, okay, that's not terrible. And having a cultist background is kind of cool. It gives you kind of like a semi-dark backstory.
Absolutely.
And I felt like it was a needed ad, but it wasn't like an overly one that made me go, yes. Oh, hey, AP is here. Whee! AP, our mod is here. The big one I thought was always needed to be added, Farmer.
Yeah.
There are so many stories where it's like some farm boy or some farm girl goes out and becomes a hero and then kicks ass. I mean, shit, man. This is the background we all needed. Well,
it's good enough for Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, good enough for Luke's. Speaking of Luke Skywalker, I saw an interesting video. I didn't get to finish it today. I'm going to finish it later. It was, what would have happened if Luke actually joined the Imperial Academy? And I'm going to finish it eventually. Gladiator hasn't really changed much. Guard is a new one, I think. I want to say Guard's a new one. It seems new to me.
I think so. There might be a similar one.
Yeah.
I think it's not.
Yeah. But the ability to have a guard is kind of cool.
Yep.
Though I dislike the fact that they automatically get Dwarvish as a language. If I was a DM, I would say pick one language that is a local language.
Sure. Or as we're going to get to the language section in a little bit, there was an addition on that list that I thought was fantastic, and guards would be a good case for it. Common sign language.
Oh yeah,
to be able to silently signal each other.
Yeah, because like some people who have no experience with the military, things of that nature. Those of us who have been in the military, we use hand signs constantly. All the fucking time. Like it's craziness. Like one show that did really well was Stargate SG-1, the Atlantis one.
Yep.
Rodney learned how to do the military sign language. So at one point he looks at Shepard, points up in the air like this. He goes, 1 tango in the center of the room. And Shepard just looks at him kind of weird and shocked. And he, like, Rodney goes, did I do it right? And the other military guy looks behind him and goes, yeah, you did exactly right. Because that's what you do in the military. You just go, like, number of people, if there's less than 5, you do that and you do your thing like this around it. It means it's in the center of the room.
Yeah. One thing I just thought of that I wanted to bring up before I forget it again. They did specifically call out, like, if you're doing a task that you are proficient in the skill and the tool you're using, you get your proficiency bonus once, but you get advantage on the roll because you have that second proficiency, which I think is huge.
Yeah, if you get a proficiency twice, getting advantage is a big deal, and I agree with that. 100%. Labor, by the way, also being added as a background. Cool.
Yep.
I'm down with that. That needed to be there because there's plenty of, just dock workers who ended up doing shit.
Absolutely.
And so there is that. Everything else is about the same, and then we get to the languages part.
Yes.
The only one or should I say, the only two I'm particularly worried about, because they're rare languages though, is Druidic and Thieves' Cant.
So I think your objection is going to be that normally they used to be restricted to basically class participants.
But here's my objection. I don't
Okay.
want them restricted to classes.
Right.
I want them restricted to backgrounds.
I get that.
It makes more sense for them to be a background thing than a class thing. Like, so many people are like, oh, it belongs in this exact class. I'm like, no. People can experience being part of a Druid enclave. Like, Druid enclaves have fighters. Druid enclaves have monks. They have people that protect it physically. So restricting it to a class didn't always make sense to me.
I agree.
I always allowed my players that if their background involved a Druid enclave, that they could pick up Druidic as a language.
So the history of class languages ties into one of my favorite weird things about old D&D, which were alignment languages. And those were the most fucking bizarre things. And I've never heard anyone come up with anything remotely like a cogent defense of what an alignment language should be and how they are played in games, and how Gary Gygax himself enforced that, like, if you're a chaotic person and you start saying lawful alignment language words, then you're going to get run out of town. But what the fuck is a lawful alignment language? And I think someone gave like half-hearted examples, like, Latin for Roman Catholic would be like some kind of lawful alignment language. That's a real language.
That's a real language. Other people that weren't lawful would speak that shit.
Yes, and it's like completely undercuts your point. But yeah, Druidic and Thieves' Cant were kind of the last real holdovers, like a restricted language.
Yeah.
And I always thought... Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I always thought the argument for Thieves' Cant in particular being restricted was very weak. Druidic...
No, I agree entirely. Like, rogues not having Thieves' Cant or being the only ones with Thieves' Cant never made sense to me, because rogues work in a team.
Yes.
And sharing that language with the rest of your team, kind of needed. Like, if I ran a Thieves Guild in a town, everybody who was a guild member, or at least a decent ranking member and up, would have Thieves' Cant.
Yeah.
Because it's so helpful to be able to have open conversations and not have the guards go, hey, let's crack your skulls.
Yes.
I do want to point something out real quick, though, that I really liked with languages.
Okay.
Primordial.
Mm-hmm.
I like the fact that they took all those various elemental languages and shoved them into one.
Yes. I think that's very good.
I game balance wise, it makes way more sense for me. I know thematic wise, it's annoying as shit. But that is one of those annoyances thematically that I can live with, because it balances the gameplay by a large margin.
I also really like the inclusion of Common Sign Language as a standard language. That's a good choice all around. It's inclusive for people who have hearing issues. Mm-hmm. It makes sense because, like we talked about, guards can use simple versions of sign language to communicate, and player characters love to be able to communicate with each other silently as they're planning an ambush.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a win-win-win as far as I'm concerned.
No, the Common Sign Language was a beautiful choice. To be brutally honest, I'm probably going to add it to all my games.
Yeah.
Now that I didn't think about it before, and with this thing being brought up, I'm like, shit, man, I'm going to add it as a language to mine.
Yep.
And just have at it. I'm going to have to write it into Travio, though. It'll take a little bit, but that shouldn't be too terrible.
But we were talking about Druidic a little bit.
Yeah,
and
Druidic.
Like, you're right. If you're part of a Druidic circle, but not necessarily a Druid, you should be able to learn that. But I wouldn't necessarily restrict it to a background either. I like the option that you can take it just as your extra language. Here's why. Because you could be a fighter currently working with Druidic Circle, but your background is as a guard. You want to be able to take that Druidic language but it's not really from your background. So
I would say for me, if I was DMing with Thieves' Cant and Druidic, your backstory has to have a reason to have them.
That's fair, as long as you don't say your background has to have it.
Yeah.
I think as long as you justify your backs.
Yeah, if you can justify it decently in your backstory, then that makes sense. Like if you grew up around a Druidic circle or you've worked heavily with one, that makes sense. If you just in passing worked with one, nah, they wouldn't teach you that language.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Rogues Guild. They wouldn't do it.
Now, I do think that the Druid class should get Druidic as a free bonus class feature. I do think that the Rogue class should get Thieves' Cant as a free bonus class feature. That's fine.
Yeah, just giving them a little bit of extra. That's A-okay. I don't mind giving a free language to a class, especially if it fits with the class perfectly. With Common Sign Language, though, there is something interesting with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's labeled as a language, and the way the rules are written, you can cast a spell with Common Sign Language as a verbal component.
Yes.
So essentially, you just created a free silent spell.
Maybe. And here's what I will say to that, because actually, as you were going through that, my mind just raced through the possibilities. It may be that in the Common Sign Language, when you're casting the verbal components of a spell, you have to make kind of more violent gestures, like impacting your hands together, so it may not be truly silent.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's 100% silent, but it's definitely going to be more quiet than spoken. Jesus. And that is something I feel like they should address in their Magic.
Yes, it is
for balance.
It's gonna be a question. They should address it, and basically say either yes, explicitly you can do it, and if you do, verbal components with your sign language, then here's how you adjust the rules for detecting a spell being cast, etc.
Yeah. So that covers the book. Then there was the video announcement, which I also wanted to cover a bit.
Sure.
In the video announcement, they stated that this was not a new edition. They were saying this is going to be added on top of 5th edition. And with all the changes they've made already, and the fact that they've already stated there's more coming. There's a lot more coming.
Sure.
I'm feeling like this is not 5th edition. This is going to be like, at the minimum, 5.5, if not a full 6th.
They have said that all the previous adventures and materials will be compatible with the new edition. And to my mind, that means it will require little conversion effort.
Right.
Like, you'll be able to take the stat blocks. You might have to change an ability here or there. You might have to change a number here or there. But it should be, if you want to run Curse of Strahd, you should be able to get Curse of Strahd run in the new edition. I think it's one of the ones they specifically call out.
Yeah.
So this feels to me more like a 5.5.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like it's at least a 5.5, if not a full 6. Like, it depends on the future of changes they make. Because if they make any, like, rather large changes, like, if they say, oh, yeah, the ASMR is completely gone, and I'm, like, sitting there going, it's in 5th Ed. You said you weren't messing with 5th Ed too much. That's removal of an entire race.
Well, even in these rules, they say you can use the old races as long as you don't use the backgrounds that have the stat bonuses. So I think by implicit inclusion, you can just say, okay, you play an Azamar as of this old book. You just don't get the stat bonuses from your background. That's fine.
That's fine. The big thing I wanted to talk about, though, with the announcement was them talking about their digital stuff. The first thing I wanted to mention was if you own a physical copy of the book, you will get a PDF copy of the book. They did say that in the announcement.
Right. Is it like a full PDF, or is it just in D&D Beyond context a PDF?
D&D Beyond.
Okay.
They are requiring everyone to use D&D Beyond for their digital stuff. So that is both good and bad. It's a baby step forward, but it's just a baby step. Yeah, I feel like if you had bought a physical copy of the book, they should provide you a PDF.
And yeah, this is a good topic to go on a little mini discussion of. A lot of companies do this in different ways. There are a lot of different options. Um, Comic books have done the digital, physical merger thing at one point. Games workshops, codexes, and whatnot. If you buy the physical one, you essentially unlock the rules in their app if you buy their app. Um, the big winners here are stuff like Mongoose, Chaosium. If you buy their physical books from them, you get a digital copy as well.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of different variations here, and what I see people really concerned about is they are asking, like, if we buy this from our local game store, do we still get the digital copy? And at least for the one trial product that they're starting this with, the answer is no.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that they go to, okay, when you buy the physical book, there's going to be a code. You take the code, you get the digital thing. The only downside there is then you have to shrink wrap the books.
Yeah. Which is a problem, but it is what it is.
Yeah, so it remains to be seen the full implementation. I like that they're giving us something extra. This is the good thing that comes of their merger with D&D Beyond. But
Yeah.
I believe you also want to discuss the bad thing that could potentially come.
Yes, and that is their virtual tabletop. D&D announced that they're going to try to be making a virtual tabletop, and that virtual tabletop is using the Unreal Engine, and they want to push all of their digital content onto that virtual tabletop.
Yes.
What I got from this is they're essentially wanting to put themselves in the virtual tabletop market and take on Roll20, Foundry, and there's like 2 or 3 other virtual tabletops out there.
Yes.
There is some problems with this, and it's some big ones. All right?
Yeah.
One, the reason why Roll20 worked so well and has done so well market-wise is because it's simple.
Uh-huh.
They followed the KISS method. They kept it stupidly simple, or keep it simple stupid, whichever version you want to use.
Sure.
All right? Whenever, say, my players go off on a tangent and they go into a different area that I wasn't planned for, and I need a map quickly, I can pull it up on Roll20 in less than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
All right? The new virtual tabletop that D&D wants to do, Wizards of the Coast wants to do, is a fully 3-dimensional Unreal Engine run map.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be brutally honest, you cannot just make a map up on the fly on that.
No, they to make it even remotely competitive, they would have to have like a free library of like generic set pieces. Like, okay, here's a forest clearing, here's a crossroad. That way, your GM library would include these, so you wouldn't have to make them up.
Yeah, they need to definitely do that, or include programs like one of the programs I have on my computer. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I have it under my tools. I have Dungeon Alchemist.
Yeah.
There's also Never Ending Dungeon that's coming out soon that I kickstarted. Both of these are randomly generated dungeon programs.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with them is it still takes me more, almost upwards to half an hour to build a map.
Yeah.
And that's just not feasible.
No.
Especially if, like you said, the players go somewhere that you don't expect, things of that nature, and you have to make something up on the fly.
Yes.
And that's not good. The second thing I'm worried about with this is microtransactions.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be brutally honest. It's not Wizards of the Coast I don't trust with this. It's Hasbro. Their parent.
Honestly, at this point, Wizards is almost the tail wagging the dog. So Hasbro has to be very careful, or they're going to ruin their cash cow. But yeah, they could try to do them.
I see it happening in several ways. One, they'll give you some like very generic things, but then they'll be like, if you want this miniature or you want this map or whatever, pay us an extra $5 or pay us an extra $10 or whatever. And I can see that adding up quickly. Also, on the same time, unless they have an import feature built into the game for, like, say, Hero Forge,
yep,
you are not going to get custom minis.
They could have their own mini creator that they build into it.
Yeah.
And that's actually a ripe area for the microtransactions. Oh, you want to unlock the deluxe set of shoulder pauldrons? That'll be $1, please.
Yeah. And I hate saying this, but I see Wizards and Hasbro doing this. I see them going the microtransaction route.
I think it's likely that we'll see it in some form, particularly cosmetics, if they do like a miniature creation.
Yeah.
That everybody loves to get the alternate skins.
Oh,
so, yeah.
I see microtransactions being there. Is it going to be as bad as, say, something like the MOBA games out there or a lot of those like free-to-play mobile games? Probably not that bad. But it's still going to be there, and I still see that souring the experience.
Yeah.
Especially when you have things like Roll20 where it's like, oh, you want to import a picture? Okay. It's free. Have fun. You only have this much space, though. But hitting that much space is difficult.
Yeah.
So it's just like, yeah, it's craziness. The third thing I'm worried about, and this is, I'm really hoping they don't do this, because if they do this, they are literally shooting themselves in the foot. And that is, pull all of their digital licenses content from other websites. So, like, going to Roll20 going, hey, we have our own virtual tabletop. You don't get our license anymore. And as much as I hate saying that, I still see it happening because, once again, Hasbro and Wizards.
I see more likely that they would charge more. And here's the thing. If you buy their player's handbook for 5.5 or whatever the hell we call it, you get a free copy of that in D&D Beyond. If you want to use the player's handbook 5.5 in Roll20, great. You can pay us for it again. I see that as more likely what they're going to do rather than try to pull it back in, because as big as D&D is, and it is the #1 role-playing game out there right now, after it re-overtook Pathfinder.
Actually, surprisingly, Pathfinder was actually never #1. It was #2.
What was ahead of it?
Call of Cthulhu.
Call of Cthulhu?
Call of Cthulhu. On Roll20, Call of Cthulhu until 5e came out.
I'm not talking about Roll20. I'm talking about in terms of books sold.
Books sold.
Pathfinder was ahead of D&D 4th edition.
Yeah, it was ahead of 4th edition, and Call of Cthulhu was ahead of 4th as well.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that, but in any case, if they want to, act like they're the big dog in the market, they are. But what they have to realize is that if you compare their market share to the market share of every other RPG out there that you can play on Roll20, and they're not bigger than all that. So I think they have an incentive to continue to be compatible with Roll20, if not necessarily giving people digital content for free for Roll20.
Brett, the stream's going well, my friend. We're definitely talking about the new D&D stuff. But yeah, that's my concern, is I don't see their virtual tabletop being viable.
I mean, I've played Tabletop Simulator. The 3D effect is cool. I've seen at least some YouTubers advertising some other 3D tabletop environment that I don't even remember the name of, and it looks cool. But you're right, trying to spontaneously throw in assets to something like that versus a 2D environment is just exponentially harder.
Oh, yeah.
If I need a random monster for Roll20, I go Google a picture, I throw it in there, I cut it to a circle, I'm done.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy, it's quick, it's fast. there's like I'm gonna talk about like a video game real quick. This makes sense.
Sure.
It's World of Warcraft. All right.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why World of Warcraft dominated the market so long and why it did so well initially.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of games at the time were doing the best graphics, with the best sound, with the best everything.
Mm-hmm.
And WoW decided, let's not do that. Let's use graphics and technology and everything from 5 years to the newest stuff back.
Yeah.
And by doing that, they made every computer practically able to run World of Warcraft.
Yep, you can run it on a potato.
Yeah, so it's like that's one of the things that makes you marketable is how many people can access it.
Yep.
And I'm going to be really honest, with the Unreal Engine they're using, which is buggy as hell, like you're going to need to do some serious, like, you know, what's we're looking for, patches to make sure that it doesn't crash frequently or, you know, send a piece through the table or something. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, I don't know how they're going to handle it. They might do most of the heavy lifting rendering on the server side and just feed stuff to the individual players.
Yeah,
which would take some of the hardware burden off.
It'll take some of the hardware burden on, but it adds a lot more of the bandwidth burden.
It can, yeah.
Yeah. And that's the other problem. The reason why Roll20 also works so well is it doesn't require much hardware, doesn't require much bandwidth to run well.
Yep.
This, on the other hand, is either going to tax your hardware or it's going to tax your bandwidth, especially with how pretty they're trying to make it.
And maybe they'll have a low graphics mode or something where you can run it, you know, with some simpler graphics.
I really hope, because that would be the suggestion I would make. Like, I'm going to watch this whole stream back later when I go to, like, write up my suggestions.
Sure.
And just to, you know, make sure I don't miss anything. And this is one of the things I'd recommend is just, like, make a 2D graphics mode. Or make a very low-grade 3D.
I honestly think they'd be foolish not to include a 2D option.
Yeah, it'd be dumb. I mean, for Christ's sakes, you can run Roll20 on a cell phone or a tablet.
Yep.
I mean, anything can be run. And it's just, it's wild. So there is that. They haven't announced yet who they're going to have show off this system. And we know that's coming. Because they're going to try to get someone famous to do it. For, you know, marketing reasons.
Yeah.
So I'm going to wait to see who they grab. But the big thing is, I want to see how this thing is run.
Skulls for the skull throne! Blood
There's
for the
Inquisition.
blood god!
Hey, Inquisition, welcome. I want to see how a normal person uses this. I don't want their text showing it off. I don't want their marketing guys showing it off. Because I guarantee you, they've all been given lessons on how to do it. I want them to grab some random person or semi-famous actor, whatever they want to use, give them no training on how to use it, and then throw it at them.
Yeah.
And see how well it works. And I want to see this on camera. I want to see this on either a stream or recorded video. Because because that will be indicative on how well this works. Because not all of us have, you know, the professional tech guy, you know, whispering in our ear, or are a professional tech guy who could figure out this shit fairly easily.
Yep.
And we got to take that into account. So there is that. But I'm going to be brutally honest. I don't think the VTT is going to work for D&D as well as they think it is. Unless they make some big changes.
Sure.
Because they're trying to go up against Roll20, who's the big giant right now for VTTs.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, Roll20 partnering with Drive-Thru RPG is just crazy.
Yeah. They have so many more RPGs now. They have accessible. They have all the books accessible. They're still working on fixing the Pathfinder compendium.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not perfect yet, but they're working on it. Um, and Paizo's even admitted that they're going to work closely with Roll20 to try to make it more seamless for their game.
Cool.
So like, I'm down with the idea. Like Paizo's trying to do both first edition and second edition Pathfinder.
Yeah.
To make it more seamless in Roll20. And I feel like that should have been what Wizards should have done. Instead of just building their own, find one to work with that already exists, that has an audience, and make that better.
I mean, there's an argument that that's what they're doing with D&D Beyond. Because it was already existing, it was independent. They snapped it up, and they're going to be adding extra features.
Oh no, like
But
D&D Beyond is like all the books and stuff, but I'm talking about just the straight virtual tabletops.
oh, that's fair. I mean, yeah. But here's the thing: I don't want them to have bought Roll20. I think if Wizards bought Roll20, that would have been a disaster.
Oh yeah.
So I'm glad that they didn't do that.
Yeah, because I have a feeling whichever virtual tabletop they bought would have only become D&D.
Yes.
And that hurts.
Yes.
But at the same time, if they, like I said, if they had bought like a smaller one and worked with that, that might have worked out better because they would have worked with people who have already dealt with all these bugs and issues and might have been able to give them better feedback.
I imagine they probably hired up some developers that have worked on others. They're a little too smart not to have at least done that.
That's my hope. But with like how graphically obsessed they seem to be, it makes me wonder if they did. Because they are really harping on the graphics.
We shall see.
Yeah.
I didn't get the sense that they were like, "Oh my God, look at our graphics!" But it was definitely a selling point for them, and I think that they think that there's a market there for people who are like, "I would love to play D&D online, but it doesn't look cool." And there are, again, more 3D style tabletop things going on. That there's at least one other. Again, I can't remember the name that I've seen people advertise is like a really cool 3D virtual tabletop. I think Crit Crab sometimes has sponsorships from them, and it's something that's starting to be out there. And I think they think it's the next big thing, and they want to be on board with it. But
oh yeah, I'm trying to see if I can find one. Let's see. There's one for apparently cell phones and Amazon. That's neat. Wizards was also asking about subscriptions for their virtual tabletop.
Tailspire.
They did a survey on it apparently. When I just searched virtual tabletop.
Okay.
And I was trying to see if I could find any other 3D ones.
Yeah, Tailspire.
Yeah, Tailspire was one you're thinking of. Yep.
Yeah.
Tailspire. All right. But yeah, they surveyed about virtual tabletops and subscriptions. And oh man, if they did a subscription-based thing, that is not gonna fly well.
I have so many subscriptions. I hate subscriptions. I don't want another subscription.
No, I'm good. I mean, I have a subscription to Roll20, but that's only for the extra stuff it gives. And I felt it was worthwhile, and I only pay once a year.
Yeah.
So, and it's not a lot of money either for once a year. So there is that. But yeah, Tailspire was one you were thinking of. But it's just like, good lord. The bigger things are like microtransactions, subscriptions, any extra money they want for this, I'm not going to be exactly down for. I can literally play this game for free on Roll20.
Yep. And that's, what they're going to have to deal with.
And if I wanted to play it 3D, I'd use Tabletop Simulator. It's $10-$20 for a one-time payment, and I get unlimited access to everything.
Yeah.
So it's like, those are the two things they're pretty much fighting against. It's like Roll20 for the, the sheer number of people it has, and then like something like Tabletop Simulator or Tailspire, which has the 3D market already, and honestly is cheaper. Or ish, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know the numbers yet. Depends. If they come out with something really cool, I'll probably at least listen to their sales pitch. And then because I tend to prefer to game in person, I won't subscribe, and nothing will change for me. But maybe enough people will enjoy it that it makes it worth their while.
Yeah, maybe. I feel like that's a maybe. Uh, but yeah, that's the big things I wanted to go over. Like, I'm waiting for the class book to come out.
Yeah.
I want to look over what the changes they make to the classes. Which ones they keep, which ones they get rid of.
Sure.
Because we all know some subclasses are going the way of the dodo.
Mm-hmm.
Especially Grave Clerics. Grave Clerics are either going to get a complete rewrite or they're going to get removed. Because
Quite
of
possibly.
well, I mean, I think I've explained Grave Clerics to you before.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, without the ability of the enemy to critically hit, their rest of their abilities are very lackluster.
Mm.
With maybe the damage improvement one being okay, but that doesn't feel, gravy.
Yeah. Um, I guess the other thing that I'll mention is I've seen some people kind of mocking Wizards because it's like, oh, this is a great idea. Back when Pathfinder Second Edition introduced it several years ago,
Yeah.
and to that I say you're right, but that's what good competition does. You
Yeah.
know,
I
they should be doing that.
Yeah, I'll give you one great example of a company that did this all the time, and it got so well known that everybody joked there is not a thing that this company hasn't stolen from another company, and that's Blizzard.
Yes,
Bl-
and
and they are the kings of stealing ideas from other games or other companies and making it their
yes,
own and making it more profitable.
yeah. I mean, Warcraft, or excuse me, Starcraft and Warhammer.
Yeah.
It's
Well, no,
yeah,
Warcraft was originally supposed to, like the Warcraft game was supposed to be Warhammer Fantasy.
yeah,
And then
but
the licensing got fucked up and they're like, well shit, we have a pretty much complete game here, but we we can't use it because of licensing shit. Well, let's change the story change some of the text blocks, and congratulations, we have a video game now.
yes, and Starcraft, very clearly 40K inspired.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
but yeah, that's what good competition does. Even when you're the market leader, you look and see what's the number two and number three guys doing, and then you try to bring in some of that because clearly there's a market for that.
Yeah.
And I
But
think when D&D was at its height, like 3.5, they said, "Well, we're the market leader. We know what everybody wants. Everybody wants what we produced in fourth edition," and they got smacked in the face because they
hard.
got cocky. They
Yeah.
said, "We determine what the market wants," and that's not how it works. Sony's done this. Microsoft has done this. Nintendo has done this. Lots of major companies say, we are going to make the next trend, not we are going to be ready for the next trend. That is when you fuck up.
Yeah, and that's the biggest problem with fourth that I always have is it's an MMO on paper.
Yes, and they thought that's what people would want. It's like MMOs are big. Let's make the game an MMO.
Yeah, they're like World of Warcraft is huge, so why don't we make it like World of Warcraft? And it's like, no. If I wanted to play World of Warcraft, I'd fucking play World of Warcraft.
Exactly.
I don't want to play D&D World of Warcraft. Piss off. And it was just like, so that's like fourth edition screwed that up so badly. Um, my hope is that Wizards has learned from its lessons from the past, but
Mm-hmm.
you never know. Sometimes hubris rears its ugly head. Um, and I will say this: if Wizards screws up this new version, because it's not an edition, um, this new version of D&D, if they mess it up, I can think of at least 3 tabletop RPGs that will capitalize on that screw up.
Yeah.
Hands down. At least 3.
Pathfinder.
Pathfinder's one. They will gobble up the entire market that Wizards basically fucked up because they did it before.
Yeah.
They're like that goofy meme where it's like, oh, yuck, I'll fucking do it again. So there is that. White Wolf is ready to do it as well.
Yeah, the new, you're talking about like the new Onyx Path people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're gearing up, ready to try to take on D&D. And then the third one is, I forget the company, but the ones who make Call of Cthulhu. Chaosium. They're geared up and ready to take on D&D if D&D messes up.
Chaosium has been really, I think, since I forget when 7th edition debuted. 2015? Maybe as late as 2016. But they have really been trying to step up their game. I have noticed them putting out more high-quality products. I've noticed them doing more actual plays, like, they do sponsorships for actual plays and do prize giveaways. So they are really stepping up to. I mean, they've been around just about as long as Dungeons and Dragons. They are the leader in the horror RPG market for a long time now.
Yeah, and a close second to White Wolf. White Wolf is the second to Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah. And so I really think Call of Cthulhu is becoming more well known and widespread. I mean, RPGs as a whole are still kind of niche. A lot of people only know D&D from Stranger Things or Critical Role, but they're getting bigger.
Yeah, and it's helping. Free RPG Day is definitely a boon. It helps out a lot.
Yes.
Some of the marketing that's being done by all these companies are also helping. Including also video games.
Yeah.
Because, like, for example, SCP Secret Laboratory and SCP Containment Breach. Oh my god, those guys helped Call of Cthulhu like no man's business. Well, and the Chaosium guys, I always keep, like I said, I was always forgetting their company name. They tout that too. They state that like the SCP video game and universe has helped their RPG immensely.
Yeah, I mean, getting people kind of in that creepypasta Slenderman SCP, headspace makes people take a look at like what RPG could give me that kind of experience, and Call of Cthulhu is a great example.
Most of the forums I'm in that involve SCPs and stuff like that, when they talk about RPGs, Call of Cthulhu is the RPG they go to.
Yeah.
Like straight up, just there is no question. Some people bring up D&D and then like usually when they do, they kind of get laughed at a little bit.
It's hard to be scared of things in D&D. You're just built so much like an epic hero.
Yeah. It's not even just that. It's just D&D is not meant for every setting. Like we've discussed before. And it's just so weird that some people try to push it that way and it doesn't work. Like, I don't see D&D working in a sci-fi setting. It's just not a thing. Like, they're doing Spelljammer, and the reviews I've seen of the new Spelljammer are not great.
I've seen some complaints, especially from people who played the old version because of the changes to how wild space work and things like that.
Yeah, I haven't got my hands on the Spelljammer book yet. I plan on it later, just at least peruse through it to see if I like it or not. But also, D&D doesn't, like you said, doesn't do horror well. It never has, really.
You can hack it to do certain genres pretty easily, but you can't easily do what I would consider an effective superhero game.
Oh no,
the scale's just not there. So yeah, there are certain genres that it doesn't do well. It's also D&D's not a particularly gritty game. If you like low fantasy, like Conan, where every battle is a potential, just a bloody end for your character. Your D&D characters are usually a little too durable for that grittiness to kind of take hold.
Oh yeah, definitely. All right. So with that being said, it's getting close to 9, so we should at least figure out who we're rating. There's so many options. Let's see. Let's start at the bottom and work our way up. Or actually, I should start at the top and work my way down. Let's see. Someone playing Final Fantasy V, Sims 4, Stardew Valley, Stray, DayZ. DayZ can be fun. I've seen some fun things there. Thor's Dad Bod is playing Divinity Original Sin again. Someone's playing Dungeons & Dragons Online, the video game. Which I did not have a good experience with that game.
I did not have an experience with that game. I heard about it and was like, cool, and then just never got around to trying it.
The biggest problem I had was I tried playing a cleric, and I tried healing, and with D&D Online, you can't click target. You have a targeting reticle in the center of your screen. And whatever you're pointing at, that's what you cast your spell at. And the healing spells in the game do radiant damage if they are targeting an enemy. Which is a problem because your tank is surrounded by enemies.
Yeah.
So healing him is difficult at best. So there is that. Let's see, a whole bunch of Fortnite. More Stray, Final Fantasy 14 Online. Let's see. The Blaze. Also Final Fantasy 14 Online. Oh, I see why 14 is being played. They just released a new patch. That's why there's so many people playing it. Alright, let's go for someone that doesn't have a lot of people and is playing 14. Because that'll be cool. So we're going to go for some... Why did it jump my screen all the way down to the bottom? Alright, so make sure that, yes, you're taking care of yourselves both mentally and physically, because that's important. Alright. Tomorrow we're playing Wildcard Wednesday, where we're doing more Dragon Age until either A, I beat the game, or B, someone spends 5,000 critical rolls and says, hey, let's change up the game. Whichever one happens first, we're going to keep doing Dragon Age. If you are, by the way, a follower, please use the following message. If you are a subscriber, please use the following message, as we're going to be rating someone named Woman 27 something something. So apparently a Digimon fan. So there is that. Yeah, make sure you have a great night. Thank you, AP. You have a great night, too. I will see you all tomorrow about 7 p.m. Eastern Time for Dragon Age, where we just got done with the werewolves, I think, and I'm dealing with the cultists. So, fun times there. I will see you then tomorrow. Please stick around for the raid. Toodles.
Toodles.